The Illegal Supercars America Sold to the public. In the 1960s, the American car industry wasn't just competitive, it was a battlefield. The war was fought not in boardrooms or marketing meetings, but on the high banks of NASCAR's superspeedways and at quarter-mile drag strips across the country. And while official racing rules and federal regulations existed to keep things fair and safe, Detroit's biggest automakers had no intention of playing by the book. The stakes were too high, and the mantra was simple: win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Winning meant sales, prestige, and brand loyalty. Losing meant fading into irrelevance. So, the manufacturers did what they had to do. They bent the rules, found loopholes, and sometimes outright lied to get the fastest, most outrageous machines onto the track and into the hands of everyday buyers. The result was a golden age of barely street-legal supercars that stretched the limits of engineering, legality, and common sense. This is the untold story of those rule-breaking legends, cars that existed only because Detroit knew how to game the system. By the late 60s, the horsepower wars had reached a fever pitch. Big block V8s were growing more powerful every year, and car buyers, especially younger ones, were hungry for speed. Gas was cheap, insurance was manageable, and performance bragging rights were worth their weight in gold. But trouble was brewing. Insurance companies had started to notice the pattern. The more powerful the car, the more claims they were paying out. Premiums for high horsepower cars began to climb, threatening sales. At the same time, racing organizations like NASCAR and the NHRA had rules that capped certain performance numbers for competition. The solution was as brilliant as it was dishonest. Automakers quietly agreed to understate, or underrate, the horsepower of their most potent engines. An unofficial gentleman's agreement emerged, with most companies keeping their official ratings under 425 horsepower. On paper, this kept the insurance companies calm and the sanctioning bodies happy. In reality, these engines were producing far more than advertised. Engineers knew it, dealers knew it, and the customers who took these machines to the drag strip knew it the moment they floored the accelerator. No car embodies this deception better than the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL-1. At first glance, it looked like any other high-performance Camaro of the day, but under the hood lurked a secret. Chevrolet had an internal ban on installing engines larger than 400 cubic inches in their smaller cars, but Illinois Chevy dealer Fred Gibb wanted something that could destroy the Mopar Hemis in NHRA drag racing. Using a little-known ordering loophole called the Central Office Production Order, normally used for fleet vehicles like police cars, Gibb managed to spec Camaros with the all-aluminum 427 cubic inch ZL-1 engine, a power plant designed for Can-Am racing. Chevy officially claimed the ZL-1 made 430 horsepower. In reality, dyno tests revealed it was pumping out well over 500, with some sources putting the figure as high as 550. This was a pure race engine, complete with a factory warranty and license plates. Only 69 were built, making them some of the rarest and most ferocious Camaros ever produced. They were loud, brutal, and unapologetically illegal in spirit, if not by the letter of the law. While Chevy was playing games with engine output, Ford and Chrysler were fighting a different war, one of aerodynamics. By the late 60s, NASCAR had evolved beyond simple brute force. On massive tracks like Daytona and Talladega, speed was as much about cutting through the air as it was about horsepower. Ford's answer was the 1969 Torino Talladega. They reshaped the nose, flush-mounted the grille, and smoothed the body lines to reduce drag. It was a car designed for one purpose: winning races. NASCAR's homologation rules required that 500 street versions be built, so Ford dutifully cranked them out and sent them to dealerships. Chrysler, on the other hand, went completely over the top. Their Dodge Charger was getting humiliated on the big tracks, so the engineers went back to the drawing board. The result was the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona, one of the wildest production cars ever built. The Daytona sported an 18-inch pointed nose cone for aerodynamics and a massive rear wing that towered nearly 2 feet above the deck lid. That wing wasn't a gimmick. It was set high to catch clean air and generate downforce at racing speeds. It worked so well that on March 24, 1970, Buddy Baker drove a Daytona to become the first NASCAR driver to break the 200 miles per hour barrier. To meet NASCAR's rules, Dodge had to sell at least 500 to the public. They built 503, and many sat unsold for months. Buyers didn't know what to make of a street car that looked like it belonged at an airport. The next year, Plymouth got its own version, the 1970 Superbird, with a slightly different nose and wing setup. Both cars were so dominant on the track that NASCAR changed the rules to effectively ban them for 1971, ending the brief but glorious reign of the Winged Warriors. Not all barely legal supercars were born for racing rule books. Some existed purely to test the limits of power and control. The Shelby Cobra 427 is a perfect example. Carroll Shelby took a lightweight British AC Ace and stuffed in a massive 7.0-liter Ford V8, creating a machine with a power-to-weight ratio so extreme that it bordered on dangerous. The Cobra 427 could out-accelerate almost anything on the road, but it demanded total respect from its driver. Even so, it was street legal, a genuine race car you could register and drive if you were brave enough. Then there's the one-of-one 1967 Shelby GT500 Super Snake, a car so outrageous, it almost feels like an urban legend. Built for a Goodyear tire test, Shelby fitted a GT500 with the same race-tuned Ford 27 V8 used in the Ford GT40s that had just conquered Le Mans. During the test, Shelby himself pushed the car past 170 miles per hour. Ford ultimately decided it was too powerful, too expensive, and too risky for public sale. Only the prototype exists today, a unicorn from an era when too much was still a compliment. But like all good things, the Wild West of muscle car law bending couldn't last forever. The early 70s brought the Clean Air Act, stricter emission standards, and skyrocketing insurance premiums for high-performance cars. Suddenly, big block V8s were liabilities. By the mid-70s, muscle cars had been neutered into shadows of their former selves, their raw power smothered by regulations and rising gas prices. Still, the legacy of those barely legal supercars has only grown. Cars that once sat unsold on dealer lots are now worth hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. The Charger Daytona, the ZL-1 Camaro, the Superbird, they've all become symbols of a time when the line between a race car and a street car was razor thin and Detroit wasn't afraid to cross it. The 1960s muscle car era was a perfect storm. Engineering talent, corporate ambition, and a willingness to push, or outright ignore, the limits. Automakers didn't just build fast cars. They built legends by bending the rules, gaming the system, and selling the public something so close to a race car that it practically belonged on the track. Today, with global safety standards, advanced electronics, and tight corporate oversight, we may never see such audacity again. But for those who lived it, and for the enthusiasts keeping the stories alive, it was the wildest ride American performance ever took. If you live and breathe muscle car history, hit that subscribe button and join the CarSwagger crew. Drop a comment with your favorite outlaw machine and share this video with someone who needs to hear the real story of America's wildest rides. CarSwagger, where we keep the legends alive and rumbling. Thanks for watching. Peace.